Hello, I'm Sweetcat and welcome back to our third channel walk and talk video. Today I'm at Atlanta Airport, which you can't really tell by what I'm looking at right now, but here you can see Atlanta Restaurant Partners. I must be in an airport or something. Anyway, I'm taking on a walk through what I actually really do like. I've heard, I used to hear so much about how people hate connecting in Atlanta, but as far as American airports go, which, you know, generally are more functional and less fun than other airports, this is nice. I like it. I like hanging out here. I like connecting here, and I kind of choose to do so if it's not ludicrously expensive. It is always ludicrously expensive, and so this is only my third time here, but I like it. I'm going to be showing you around it, and maybe you'll like it too. But the purpose of this very public walk and talk video is not only, as always, testing the weirdness of speaking to yourself in front of a group of strangers. That's always fun too. But it's also to talk about the power of self-selecting groups. There's an interesting thing, right, in that, you know, in a way, everyone here is a stranger, and so it's exactly the same as walking out on the street. You know, you're getting an entirely random subsample of people you might assume, but actually not. And I want to talk about the incident and how it relates to that, because when you're at an airport, you have a very specific subset of people that are traveling right now. But you might say, well, some people are traveling right now, some people are eating. No, travelers tend to be a specific set of people, whether that's because they have family that are far away, so far that they have to travel and, you know, fly to see them every single time. Maybe they live in another country with a flag that looks like this. Aren't these flags nice? The answer is yes, these flags are nice. But the interesting thing is that traveling is a select group of people, but you wouldn't be able to spot it just by looking. And I saw a tweet that really, I don't know why it jolted into me so much, but I saw something along the lines of like, oh, now 80% of UK adults have been vaccinated, and there's a woman being like, you know, you're saying that, it's funny, but, you know, of anyone I know, we're all in the 20%. It seems like you're making up these statistics. And ignoring the fact that people are dumb and don't know statistics, this is a this is a widely known thing. And it's how most people probably criticized her. I think it comes down to more not realizing the difference. You know, like, if you had a random grouping of 12 people, and not a single one, you're truly random, and not a single one of them had, you know, done something, vaccine, whatever related, then that would be actually weird for statistics. If you actually had a number of people, you know, that would be statistically significant in a way that you'd have to do something. And so I think, you know, you'd have to realize something was wrong, you know, like if the government made up a stat that, did you know, 80% of people are actually monkeys, or like 80% of people are actually rhinoceroses, you'd be like, well, actually, I haven't seen a single person who's a rhinoceros. You make it, there's a dumb example, but you get the point, right? You'd actually have to question it, and there is value in questioning things, but sometimes people question things for the wrong reasons. And one of the things we don't question is this weird generation of people who have grown up entirely on the internet. I'd like to believe I'm lucky in that when I was like 5, the internet existed, AOL and stuff. I never really knew too much about it. I became like very internet heavy age like 7, and then like it started to evolve and become widespread during my teenage years. And although I'm sure it messed with those teenage formative years, that was a tight gap. I don't know if it looks like it on camera. I switched to a slightly wider angle because I kept not showing things off in videos. It was a whole thing. Anyway, so I see, we're walking through Atlanta. It's a nice walk, this airport is. But the interesting thing about the internet and how everyone is just so used to it and has grown up with it is how it is a group of self-selecting individuals. Like, it is so widespread now. Like, at the end of my teenage years, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, some people did that. Because it started as some people, and then it became like a few people, and then some people, you know, most people were there at some point. Like, everyone had a Facebook account, but who checked it, you know? And then that becomes, now everyone has everything. You might not have all the specific things yourself, but, you know, you have an Instagram or a Reddit or, you know, insert all these big medias here. Like, everyone is on something, and probably on multiple things. And so, also true for society as a whole. I think you'll find, but not for another day there. But like, every single person is, oh, I think I have to go up to get to the next set of gates. I'm down with that. But yeah, anyway, every single, you know, like almost every single person, not quite everyone, but like, it'd be weird to not have any interaction with the internet. And so you might logically assume that on the internet, in these places, you have a true random sampling. You know, it's not like being in an airport where you have to spend, most likely, hundreds of dollars on a ticket to be here. You know, that is a very self-selecting group by wealth, by maybe nationality, by, you know, like all these sorts of different things that coalesce into one place. But the internet doesn't have that. And walking up that escalator was actually hard for once. And that is a new feeling. But yeah, it's really interesting that like you would assume that the internet is therefore an entirely random group of people, but there's a problem in that actually no, right? Actually, it's a very self-segregated group of people depending on where you are. Reddit is the most famous example of this because it has subreddits, specific places where you go to find people specifically like you. And some people are like smart at knowing, they're like, oh yeah, when you go on, I don't know, let me pick a subreddit, r/Bitcoin, you know that you're gonna find people who are very enthusiastic about that. You're not gonna get the average guy being like, you know, this sure is expensive and doesn't work as a currency. No, you're gonna get, this is the future, and haven't you heard El Salvador's using it? If you go on, you know, r/Digimon, you're not gonna get people being like, you know, it's not as good as I remember when I was a kid. You're gonna get people being like, oh my god, you excited for the new Japanese only show that's available on Crunchyroll? Because people who aren't excited aren't there. And this like excitement segregation, I think it's good. I think it's healthy even. But what was designed for maybe excitement segregation has turned into like more than that, I would say. Because, and hear me out here, but there's gonna be a lot of ups and downs in this video, I guess. I thought it was just one long underground tunnel, but I guess I thought wrong, huh? But yeah, one of the other things that I thought wrong with was that like when you see something on Twitter as an example, that is quite the noise. But when you see something on Twitter, for example, you assume that's representative of the average population. But really it's like representative of who you follow. And then Twitter as a whole, because although everyone is on some form of internet, Twitter is a very, very left-wing platform, you know? And so another one that like I think teenagers, especially now, dealing with are, there are all sorts of things that see, like one of the crazy things about growing up with the internet through the latter half of my formative years, and then, you know, I would say now being in a weird position where I have to do a lot of real physical things, is so often there'd be this moment where like you feel like you know something, you've heard this really detailed, in-depth version on the internet, everyone's upvoting being like, yeah, that's so true. And then it comes into direct conflict with what you see with your own eyes. It's insane that would be possible. Like, you know, okay, an example that I'm very passionate about is tipping in America. It is a very controversial thing. Unlike other countries where you get paid a certain amount and then if you get tipped, it's on top. If you don't get tipped, generally you don't make a lot here. And in fact, it's worse than that. Tips are actually subtracted from a lot of jobs. Like, they assume you make, you know, 10, 15% a table, and they'll take that away from you at the end of the night to give to other people, regardless of whether you made it. Tips are literally subtracted in America. It's a really evil-seeming system, and like, you know, I was like on board of helping these, you know, these poor waiters and waitresses who could be screwed through no fault of their own. And then you realize that because the response to the system is people do become very generous. Again, whether it's generosity or whether it's forced is a whole debate, because again, when tipping is subtractive, giving a tip isn't generous, it's just the default. But because people here are so generous, every single waiter server I've ever spoken to makes a ton. And that could be our own self-selecting group. But I've yet to meet one who is like, yeah, I'd rather be paid, you know, even like double minimum wage, right? It's a lot more than that. If you work at anywhere half decent place, the really, really, really nice restaurants, the reason they can have such good waiting staff is because those jobs are effectively $50 an hour jobs. They're just not being paid by the restaurant, they're being paid by you. And that's where it gets really sneaky, because, you know, low-end places, you're paying for them to live, basically. High-end places have trick, you know, like, no, they would never be able to viably pay that themselves, or they would never want to. But they've tricked you into what, you know, paying for your own high-quality service and then thanking them for it. Anyway, so, damn it, I got on a tipping rant. Just trying to talk about the internet. But yeah, it's so interesting because it came into direct conflict by like as a customer, you can hate tipping, and that's what I do. But people had morphed it into, oh yeah, it's these people hate it. Like they'd morph it into an issue on someone else's behalf. And there are a lot of servers who no doubt do dislike it, who will make less than that. But the majority do not. And to give another example, because there are so many points where internet, real life come into direct conflict with each other. You know, actually, I forgot the example. But so basically people self-group into things and they create this kind of like shared opinion spaces. And the reason Twitter's so left-wing is because of the Tumblr thing. You know, like Tumblr basically shut down all the NSFW stuff, and the closest place they could go is Twitter. All of these basic places have very different views that permeates into everything that goes into them. And so you get these people who have spent a lot of their formative years only seeking out specifically people like them. But in the real world, one of the powers that we have, I don't know if it's good or bad yet, we're going to see over the next 20 years, and I pray it's good. One of the things we're going to see is it a good thing for people not to be grouped based on geography, not to have to know people who have different views to them, but to choose to if they want to, you know? Being in the same room as someone physically, especially these days, am I right? Yeah, you see that high quality COVID commentary, but especially these days, right? It is a very much optional thing as to whether you want to be physically near someone. But what isn't optional is that hanging out on the internet. And if you're picking from 7 billion people in the world, you're going to find some people who agree with you on some things, or that lead you down some things. I think there's a whole, you know, we talk about the radicalization rabbit holes, about how people are grouped so far, all the way on the one end and the other. I look forward to watching these videos back just to see, like, are people looking at me like I think they are, or is it is it just imaginary? But yeah, basically, I think there's this really interesting thing that, like, we all know about, like, people can be taken down these weird routes where, you know, like, people take a one thought, you know, and if you think about it, the enthusiasm version of this is basically the same, right? You're saying, like, oh yeah, I'm only going to let people who agree with me that Digimon is worth watching, or that Bitcoin is good, or that, you know, actually, if you think about it, the means of production are being separated from the workers by a systematic tool, or whatever, you know, set of words you want to use. But look, it gets dark here. That's pretty. But you're going to find people who are very, very, very in agreement with you, and that push you a little bit further. Because Bitcoin's not just good, it's the future. Digimon's not just good, it's the best show ever. You know? It's not just that the means of production are being separated from the proletariat, or whatever people would say. It's that the only way to end the eternal suffering caused by that is through revolution. Can't you see it? Haven't you seen, you know, I don't know, the whites versus the reds in Soviet Russia? Haven't you seen, you know, Maoist China and the success they're having? The only way, the only thing you need to do is to fight and die for your cause. Why are you not doing that yourself, and so on and so forth? But I think we talk about that in terms of politics and interests and stuff. I think we don't see that, like, people self-segregate into all sorts of other groups about, like, oh yeah, I'm a little weird in this way. And then people are like, oh, I'm weird in this way too. I'm also weird in this really other weird way. And this can escalate real fast to where whole communities are doing crazy things to themselves, or, you know, believe crazy things about themselves. Some of which will be true. Some of the radicalization, this is the thing, right? Some people want to be radicalized. And there's a whole bunch of categories off this that you could do. But basically, this is where I think the struggle becomes. Is it good for people to not have to conflict with the real world? Or is that going to be one of the worst mistakes? And I don't know what the real answer is. What I do know is that every single person I've ever met, every single one, I'm being very serious here, has had the same small, minor issue with just not quite knowing what the average person thought about a thing. Everyone has very self-selecting views on that sort of thing. And That is really interesting. That is that's a problem. Maybe not a problem, but it's one of those things that I think we're gonna have to think about. It's gonna take a big leap forwards or backwards. Correct, leap forwards. See, high quality. But yeah, there's generally gonna have to be a big old thought about, do you need to see what the real world is, or do you just need to, because, you know, I say real world and everyone says real world, like, it's the real world, kid. But I think it's more like there are 7 billion of us living together, and if you live in a small country, there's only a few million of you living there, but that's millions of individuals, you know? And when you don't understand the other people in your own country, when you misunderstand what they are, and your goal is to be normal to fit in with that misunderstanding, I think that's, like, I think something that should be more stated is like, you know, isn't fitting in nice? Like, it's hard, I would say, for me to do. But like, sometimes you do it and you're like, oh yeah, that's cool, that's good. Glad I did that. Look at this, by the way. There is a health machine? Or is that a, wait, one sec. I want to get closer to that. That is, it says green spirit. No way, that's what I think it is, right? Oh, it's hemp. Yeah, I was gonna say, it feels like in an airport it'd be especially illegal. So it feels very, something feels very wrong about that. Speaking of things that are wrong, you know what else is wrong? Your opinions. They're all wrong. I'm just kidding. But you know, I think something that is a problem, because, you know, you can be whatever you want to be. But what if you want to be the average expected thing? What if you want to be, you know, normal, air quotes, and you misunderstand what normal is? Does that have issues? I don't know. I genuinely, I feel like everyone has these big ideas about what's wrong, and 99 point, you know, like, it's like how off the last big crises, you know, like, you know, off the last 10 big crises, I predicted 100. Well, it's like a big thing people say. Bad things do happen, but generally more good than bad happens. Everyone's just kind of winging it together. There's done a whole lot of surprising good for the world, and I think that's nice, you know. And if you don't think that's nice, then I don't think you're nice. But that's okay, because I tolerate you regardless of how nice you are, and I hope that's okay. With that said, though, this is Delta Land, Atlanta. I want to say it's the largest hub airport anywhere in the world. It's like insane. Every single one of those, like, this isn't end to end quite. I could walk a lot further. This is like 70% of the way through the airport. And you can still see this plane's further that way. I can just keep on going. This is a very, very insane place. And the reason I like it, by the way, to finish off on like a personal note, is because unlike most American airports, which are kind of set up for business travelers, you know, just get in, get out, or maybe domestic connections, this one is set up for like domestic and international, and people connecting real far. And so they make it nice, like it's an international airport, like it's a real airport in a real country that doesn't have this whole domestic thing going on. Because America has the most expensive flights, but also the least enjoyable airports. And I've never been able to quite piece that one together. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found something in it. And I hope you think sometimes about all the weird people in the world, all the people you don't assume are very common, but that you do see all the time. And oh, that is like my alarm tone. They're giving me so much existential dread right there. Anyway, you know what else gives me dread? You, I don't know, being subscribed. So go on, do that now. Thank you. Goodbye.